This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
I got this really weird feeling when I got to the shop, like something didn't seem right. And I looked, and I noticed that my security camera in back was smashed out. So I opened the door, and, you know, the shop is destroyed. You can't really notice if things are out of place at that point. And I start walking through the shop, and I think I barely have slept. I don't know if I'm just being delusional or whatnot, but I'm like, I could have sworn there were parts sitting there, and I could have sworn that there was an engine there. I get to the front door, and I realize that another camera's sprayed out with spray paint. So I realized that I got looted.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now. Hey everyone, I'm pumped for today's guest. I've got a true, dedicated, die-hard, hard-working, badass artist with us today. So Joel Levy is the artist behind Race Spec LLC, a company devoted to custom motorsport wiring harnesses. Race Spec's a Motec dealer and a reseller of custom wiring harness components, from connectors to wiring to loom. So Joel, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you got a lot of harnesses and big projects on the docket to talk with us today, man.
Right on. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your business. How did you get started, and what's your background?
I guess I grew up not liking cars at all. I did not really feeling the vibe of, growing up in a car family or anything like that.
Yeah.
When I got out of high school, I got my first car, which was a Acura Integra GSR. I had no desire to really be tinkering with it at all. And then, I kind of had this realization that you can do pretty cool stuff with them. So started taking them apart, and, at the time I was working for UPS and delivering pizzas on the side. And as time went on and I was working on my own car, I kind of, figured out that I could be doing side work, engine swaps and engine assembly, etc. And I kind of rolled with that for a little while. Fell into drag racing. Live out in Jersey, so I'm fortunate enough to have Englishtown, about a half hour away.
Yeah. Started
going to test and tunes, and was.
And when was this?
Oh, this was 05-ish, 06. I did that for a little while, I wasn't drag racing, by any means. I remember going down and, watching races and seeing, the old school eat, sleep, race guys racing the sport front back then, like Steve Jung and whatnot. And it was really cool to me, to go down to an event like that and see, the Sony Explode stuff everywhere and blimps up and TV crews filming for ESPN2. And I felt, this is really cool. I want to kind of stick with this a little bit. So a little bit of time went on. I started racing bracket, and I did well with it. I remember must have been 2007, I think. The car went 1090 on a stock motor in a full weight car with a cage in it. And back then, that was decently quick. From there, I was doing enough side work, getting a little drawn out with UPS, that I figured, hey, I want to open up a shop, and I want to find a way to do this for a living.
Yeah.
So I did, literally overnight, and I've kind of been running with it ever since.
So did you start out with a speed shop, trying to do dyno tuning, fabrication, parts sales, the whole thing?
Somewhat yes, somewhat no. Never the dyno tuning and, fab work. Where I was in New Jersey is kind of a very heavy area of equal capability and equal services offered by other shops.
So there's no way to differentiate yourself if you're going to offer the same thing as everybody else.
Correct. That's what I felt. There were so many people in a 10-mile radius. I felt that it was just going to be a waste of time and money to try to market to clients in that area. So I was on Honda Tech a lot in the forums, and I started attracting out-of-state customers, cars, Maryland, Virginia, Connecticut, getting brought in.
For what services?
We would, at the time I was doing a lot of like full builds. So, chassis would come in, we'd do the suspension work, we'd do engine assembly, we'd do trans work if needed, turbo kit installations, prepping the cars to more or less get fired up and trailer it off to a dyno to get tuned.
Okay. Did you offer trackside support or like what? I guess I get the general gist. It was just an overall speed shop.
Yeah.
When did you really start to niche down?
I'd probably say like 2 years after like initially opening the doors, so to speak, at my first little, very small shop. I decided I want to focus a little bit more on racing and drag racing in particular, and started getting away from doing clutch jobs and simple things along those lines. I started just trying to deal with more customers that were going to be at a racetrack every weekend and that were dedicated, because that's what I was doing, and I wanted to associate with the same type of clientele, really.
So what happens if somebody walks into the shop and says, can you install this clutch? And it's a tough month and you want to make, quick $300.
Nowadays or back then?
No, back then.
It would, I'm a hustler, so I would, see how late it was in the day, and if I could knock it out, sure. Most of the time, my time didn't really permit, anything outside of what the schedule had in plan. Most of the projects we were doing, it wasn't, in and out in 2 or 3 days. The car would
drop it off and you'll figure it out.
More or less, and it got to the point that it was getting busy, and I was getting, I guess you could kind of say, bogged down with the length that the projects were actually taking versus the return that I was getting as far as an invoice. And that's a tough thing to balance, because you want to put the time into producing something that has the quality for your customer. But the Honda market is a little tough, because you've got, with this competition like I spoke about, you've got everybody undercutting anyone for $5, whether it's on a part, whether it's on a labor bill. And it's just not really great for the overall scheme of being in business for a long time.
So did you realize that back then? And did you have a plan, or what was your plan?
I did.
Like a lot of people say, I just showed up more.
Yeah.
12 to 16-hour days.
Mm-hmm. I've been doing that for 7 years now, 12, 16-hour days. I realized it. Unfortunately, I was young when I opened my shop. And I am still young, but a lot of the learning, I'm sure a lot can agree, kind of comes along the way. Most of the instances that people run into in our market are not things that even, go into school for business that they could really prepare you for or give you examples on how to handle. So I was young and I was so busy with projects that I did not really realize that as a important thing for me to set my mind on and figure out.
So you realize it now, looking back, that it was hard to make a profit and the amount of time you were spending basically wasn't worth it.
Absolutely.
At the time then, you didn't realize it?
I did. I realized it. I just, you're still making money, still paying the bills and living a quasi-normal life. So I want to say the importance of it and me shifting the business was something that I realized and I planned out for like a year and a half timeline. I wasn't trying to, do it overnight. It's hard to go from, being set up in one market and dealing with, an arrangement of clients and maybe other businesses to overnight saying, hey, I don't do this anymore, I only do this now, and not going belly up within 2 months.
So there wasn't ever a point that you said, I'm going to shift my business, and then if something walked in the door that was the old business, that you had to sit down, hold your ground, and tell them, no, I don't do that anymore. That never had to happen?
I don't recall it happening, no, to be honest.
Okay. So I want to transition a little bit. Basically, a lot of things that people have to overcome is kind of self-doubt. They have the devil on the shoulder saying, who are you to make this happen? How can you get this done? So I got to ask you if you ever had and if you still deal with self-doubt.
Absolutely, every day. I feel that doubt is equally important to confidence. And I also feel that there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. If you truly master your craft, there's a saying that I really like, and it's professional practices until he can't get it wrong, and an amateur will only practice until he can get it right. If you doubt yourself, and it doesn't have to be in like a masochistic way, it just has to be, did I do that to the best of my ability in the way that I want my product to be? I feel that it kind of gives you a further jump of product quality control. Just so happens that if you don't doubt yourself and mistakes happen, because they will, that the mistakes that we generally would have to deal with in this market, coincidentally, are very expensive. And I feel that doubting your own ability is different than, doubting what you've done on a day-to-day basis, and particularly maybe what you're doing on a specific project. A lot of specialists, they're not doing something that takes 5-10 minutes. It's, 2 days worth of work to 2 months worth of work. There's a lot of stepping stones along the way and a lot of check marks that have to get crossed off. So I feel that it's important to kind of question yourself a bit, and I personally feel that it ties directly into producing something that you can stand behind and be proud of.
So you touched on something there that put a light bulb off to me, and that's that you're a pretty sequential worker. So I feel like you're segmented where you say, all right, this is a 30-step process. Would you say that you're good at going step 1, checking it off, step 2, checking it off, step 3, checking it off? Is that something that you can do?
Sure.
Is that how you work or not?
Mentally, yes, and occasionally by hand and physically having a compartmentalized checklist for a project, sure. And I think that a lot of it, if you don't, kind of things are born to go overlooked. And especially with building a loom, say, there's so much time that goes into it, and there are so many steps. It would probably blow most people's mind if it really got broken down. But if you are rushing and you don't take things into account, then things get overlooked, and you potentially end up working twice as hard for the same result because you've got to go back and make revisions. Lists are helpful, and the amount of steps after doing this for a while, it kind of just gets in your brain on, okay, this is what I have to do first, this is what comes after, and so on and so forth.
Nice. Well, I've always been really impressed with your ability to continuously put out a really high-quality product, even when everybody's barking at you. So I got to give you a pat on the back for that, man. It's impressive.
Oh, thank you. It's a bit of a balance, that's for sure. There never seems to be enough, hours in the day, but in producing something that takes such a long time, it's a constant struggle in balancing it and trying to, not have to turn your phone off and not be actually checking the rest of the business functionality and focusing on producing what it is that you're in business to do. But in the same notion, a lot of it's tough to be distracted while you're doing something that requires so much attention.
So how do you do that? If you're going to sit down and how long does an average loom take you? I know it's hard to say average, but
sure. It depends the type, but I would probably say at a minimum 40 to 50 hours for the stuff that, we produce regularly. Some of the custom projects and custom, just say an engine loom, get on some that easily topple over 90 to 100 hours. So it's... So
if you're going to sit down and you're going to do a 40-hour loom,
yep.
Do you And so obviously that's over multiple days. So you're going to sit down and do, what, 5 hours at a time, 8 hours at a time? Do you turn your phone off so that your phone's not going off like crazy?
Occasionally, yeah. I have a VIP list that will get through even if it's on silent. And those are realistically just emergency clients that, I've been working with for a long time that I need to ensure that I'm there for.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah, it's important. I have clients throughout the country. I've got clients in other countries, and when time zones factor in, it's a little bit tough to say, hey, I'm going dark on the world today, because I may have someone racing in Kuwait. I may have someone racing out west. I need to be available to support them in any way that I can. I try to give myself, in the day, the first 4 to 5 hours of the day is normally handled for inquiries, sales, emails, packing, shipping, purchasing, etc. And then once the afternoon kind of rolls around, I try to transition into sitting down with my looms and, making progress on projects, which typically always turn into late nights.
I see that follow your Instagram, and anybody who's listening needs to follow Joel on Instagram. And it's crazy. It's porn to me. I mean, you got to admit that the stuff that you're producing is pretty cool to look at.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. Sure.
Tell us something that you're doing right now that has you fired up.
I am currently producing a loom for Tony from T1 Race Development, GTR, or the GT1R, that we're doing a customized loom for, that I've been working on for a bit. It's coming out really awesome. Should be done in the next day or so. And that has been consuming a lot of my time, but I'm extremely pleased with the way it's coming along, and another opportunity to work with such a great guy and a good established business.
So that brings something to mind. How do you put the same amount of effort into a loom like that really gets you fired up and it's a move in the direction that you want to go? And how do you put the same amount of effort into that loom as, a loom that you've done 50 times before? And I got to tell you, I've never looked at something that you've done and being like, oh, he hurried up on that. And I feel like I have a pretty discerning eye. I like to, look at things and, I don't know, try to improve them.
Sure.
But when I look at your stuff, every single one of them looks to a super high quality. So how do you do that? How do you care the same about the same loom that you've done 50 times and the loom that really gets you fired up, like something working with Tony and T1?
Every product that I make, ranging from some small little, ignition conversion kits that we do for some Honda stuff to full flat out customized solutions like this T1 project. I put my best foot forward on all of them, and I don't allow a time crunch to sacrifice quality. It's something that I struggle with. I feel that the best thing that I can do is produce the best quality component and package that I can make. And whether I'm dealing with a client that maybe doesn't have a huge budget and we're working around that, to a client that is using Motec products and they just want a really good product and something that is still quasi-affordable, to projects that, sometimes we get clients that there is no budget and they just want the best of the best of the best. We're talking connectors that are in the hundreds of dollars for each side of the connector, and some other material selection choices that really jack it up. I feel any time that my product goes out the door, I feel like if anyone ever looked at it, they're going to say, wow, that's a great product. I can tell, like you just mentioned, that there was not a rush or let's just knock this out and get paid. The quality aspect is the most important thing for me, and the business for sure.
Words of wisdom. It's hard. I think everybody struggles with it, right? You gotta pay the bills. At the same time, you want everything that you touch to be the best thing you've ever made. So that's a balancing act for sure, and it's impressive that you pull it off. I'm props again.
Try to pull it off. I appreciate it, and I'm glad that it goes noticed. It's something that I truly struggle with, and there's only so many hours in the day, and getting stuff out and meeting deadlines and trying to keep every client happy, it's tough to do when you're doing something that takes so much time to actually do. It's not like I'm taking a part that another company made, putting it in my own box, changing a couple things, and sending it out the door. I'm physically constructing this, this stuff from an array of material that, when it comes together, is what it actually forms. By itself, it doesn't really do anything for anyone.
So, something that has recently kind of came to my attention, I'm in the business of manufacturing products, and, one of the things that's difficult is making a product, and then how do you tell enough people about it to where you can sell it? Mm-hmm. So, a concept that's really blowing my mind right now is you have to build a product that's so remarkable that the marketing's built into it. So you don't have to build a product and then a marketing campaign where you're going to go out and tell people about it. Yeah. Just the act of selling the product, the marketing's built in. Your product is one of those things. Yep. People get the loom, and what's the first thing that they do when they pull it out of the box? It's so cool looking. They take a picture of it and post it up. So they're doing the marketing for you. And it's a segue for the next question for you, and that's, did you actively go out and spread the word, or did your customers spread the word for you?
When I started really focusing my energy and time on building looms, I was fortunate enough to have a good group of drag racers, Honda drag racers, in the area that I met through Chris Harris at Xenocron. And they, some opportunities presented themselves for me to build stuff for the car. I felt that even back then, a couple years ago, they were pleased with it, and it kind of snowballs, like you're saying, that your customers almost do the marketing for you. It goes both ways, though, because, if I deal with a client, say, and it's a big client, and, there's a sponsoring aspect to it, and a sticker goes on the car, I would be lying if I remembered the last time that I had an inquiry for my services that was based off, hey, I was at the track, or I saw a video and I saw your sticker on this car, and I'm curious to know what you did for them, and can I have the same thing? I gotta
pause for you really quick. Sure. Because that's something that I think the audience needs to understand.
Yep.
People are always like, oh man, I'll put your sticker on my car, as if they're doing you this incredible favor.
Sure.
But I can't remember a single time either that someone said, I saw this sticker, so now I want your product.
Correct.
It just doesn't work like that.
No, it really doesn't. For me, at this point, I've been extremely fortunate to work with some of the top guys in, the Honda drag racing community, and it's a diehard thing because there's really no sanctioning body. So these guys are just going out and thrashing at races because they have a passion for it. My sticker on a car does not really gain me any business. It just, in my eyes, it pounds in the brand recognition with successful groups of people.
Right, and brand equity is huge over time for sure. Like, people need to associate your stuff. So it's not that it's not important. It's just that it's not acutely important, like, right now. It's not going to drive a phone call.
No, absolutely not. And, another thing, when somebody calls you and is like, I'm going to put a sticker on the car, it's like, okay, thank you. Not to sound rude or anything, but it's like, yeah,
of course,
that's great, but it's not like you're a 18-wheeler trailer that's traveling across the country and people are going to be calling in based off this. It doesn't. I feel like it attracts maybe business that, not that you don't want, but maybe that you don't necessarily want to be focusing on. If that is correct to say.
Okay.
And it's equally important, and people on both sides of the fence will always have different views on things. But I think that in the grand scheme of things, like you said, the brand recognition is what's most important to me, and the advertising that you get through social media now is absolutely insane. To answer your initial question, when I first started really doing this heavy, I was not concerned about getting more business. I was concerned about perfecting what I was doing so that I could be completely confident in my ability and my product. I started an Instagram account, I started posting pictures, and, now a couple years later, I've got 7,000 something people following what I do with wires, which is just crazy to me, because it's geek stuff, But I think I've also gained a huge amount of customers based off of it. Some of my biggest customers in the world I've gotten through Instagram. So, the fact is now it's free to market that way. It's not like, they charge you to do it. And I think that the thing that I think is really cool about it, and I think of it from a perspective of I'm not in this industry. I'm a enthusiast, as a consumer. You've got this ability to kind of see what a company that maybe you support or you've done business with or you're interested to do business with is doing on a day-to-day basis. And it's kind of stuff that maybe could be behind the scenes, so to speak. So I feel like they want to see, what are you working on and what actually goes into that product. And in the long term, I think for some people that it actually makes them appreciate what you do and your product more than seeing it on a website with a couple vague pictures and a high price tag.
It feels more real and more personal for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears now to some negative stuff and how you overcame it. So I'm going to ask you about the worst experience that you've had in business. Tell us about that story and take us there.
How much time do we have?
Let's go. Make it happen.
Let's see. Well, I know exactly what it is. My past business down in Jersey, which was, the more mechanical side of things, I got hit with a really devastating blow during Hurricane Irene, which was a couple years back. It'll be 4 years this August. We got slammed with the shop ended up having about 5.5 feet of water from the front door to the rear overhead door. Had 11 cars inside, product, inventory, tools, customers, belongings. And I literally lost everything that I built in those years and that I had overnight. It was completely just taken from me. So, it's been a challenging couple of years and trying to get past that. There were a lot of further circumstances that were involved in it, but it wasn't like a little flood and one town got afflicted. This storm hit more or less the entire East Coast. Obama declared the county and the town that the old shop was in as a disaster area. FEMA was set up, and it was crazy.
So in that situation, man, you got to be waking up in the morning or not sleeping at night trying to figure out what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. At that point, what was your mindset?
I didn't really even know what to think. I got, obviously it was in tune with the area that we were in. There was a river close by. That was a pretty big river in New Jersey, New York area. And I remember getting the phone call, the automated from the township that, expect flooding. We don't know how bad it's going to be. Initial forecast for this, that, the other. So I stayed up for 2 days straight preparing the shop, sandbags. I got a truck full of cinder blocks and was jacking cars up off the ground and putting them on, 5 or 6 cinder blocks just to get them as high up as I could. I must have bought cases and cases and cases of foam insulation spray, that great stuff that you jam in the crack and spray it out.
Yeah.
I was up literally just 2 days straight preparing the shop, Getting in touch with customers, making sure everybody was aware that this was going to happen. It wasn't going to, it's not like a snowstorm that they're going to be wrong about, like this hurricane was coming. The rivers it was something like 10 plus rivers in the area reached their historic height ever. So, it was absolutely insane. It wasn't, something light for sure. I remember, I packed it up and I sealed the door. I put tarps down. I put sandbags over the tarps. I was trying to do anything I could to prepare. And I remember I locked the door and I kind of just, crossed my fingers. The storm hit. The town got closed off by the National Guard for probably 2 or 3 days. They were only allowing residents into the town. I got detained at the check stop because I lost my shit that they wouldn't let me through. I couldn't grasp the concept that, I was a business in the town, but I can't get through. But if I lived in the town, I could get through. So I finally, that just blew over. I drove down the road, I parked my car, and I walked about 3/4 of a mile to get to my shop. I probably, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of a mile away from the shop, I was in, ankle-high water. By the time I could see the shop, I was in waist-high water. And I was wading through it, garbage floating, dead fish and animals everywhere. And I had no real purpose to go do that besides I needed just to see if I could even get a glimpse of what I was going to have to deal with in the coming days. Obviously, with water that high, I couldn't really get the door open. So I just stood there for maybe 10-15 minutes when I finally got to the back door, trying to peer through the tinted, glass in the overhead door, and trying to get a grasp on what really transpired in there. After that, I turned back around and I got back to the car, soaking wet, disgusting, and I called Nikki. I told her, I have no idea what I'm going to do, and a couple days later, I was finally able to, drive back there, and it was just a complete and utter disaster.
Dude, I don't even know what to say. That's the single craziest, most, I don't know, the most impactful story so far. I can picture you walking down the street and being in waist-high water. I don't know how I would even deal with that.
Man, I remember seeing one other tenant in, the industrial park that I was in, floating around on a raft with a box on his hand that he was using to, paddle through the water. It gets worse, though. So I get in there, I start cleaning up, and, it was just, it was disgusting. It was horrible. I had 2 55-gallon drums of waste oil and fuel that ended up in the front of the shop on my desk, emptied out everywhere. It was gnarly. So, I'm standing there, and the only thing I could think to do is just start cleaning up, I had to do something. I was kind of going stir crazy, not even working for a couple days. Following day, I get in there. I must have had a 10-foot tall pile of damaged parts, product, engines, you name it. And I got this really weird feeling when I got to the shop, like something didn't seem right. And I looked, and I noticed that my security camera in back was smashed out. So I opened the door, and, the shop is destroyed. You can't really notice if things are out of place at that point. And I start walking through the shop, and I think I barely have slept. I don't know if I'm just being delusional or whatnot, but I'm like, I could have sworn there were parts sitting there, and I could have sworn that there was an engine there. I get to the front door, and I realize that another camera's sprayed out with spray paint. So I realized that I got looted, and they pretty much took everything, regardless of it was damaged, destroyed, or whatever, that they could get their hands on. Security system was obviously not functioning due to the flood, and I luckily had one camera that I put up in the rafters. I hit the DVR, and it gave me about a 25-second clip of two individuals that I knew, a past employee and a past customer. And I, kind of did not jump the gun initially. I got the cops involved, but there was really not much that they were going to do for me. And long story short, I ended up getting the majority of it all back that they took. I mean, the police said that from what they could figure, they were in the air in my shop overnight for a few hours, taking parts, literally taking like cars that were destroyed, taking turbos, manifolds off of them, walking right out the front door, loading up their car, coming back in, doing it again and again and again. So I got most of the stuff back, not all of it, believe it or not, but most. And from there, I had really no direction on what I was going to do. I felt, that I didn't really have many options available to me, or ways to go, people to, give me kind of, hey, what should I do? What are you closed?
So what did you do then? Was it a blessing in disguise looking back because it forced you to focus? Absolutely. I would agree with that. It was the best and worst thing that could have ever happened to me. As this all happened, Chris Harris, and Xenocron, and I were in touch. We've known each other for years. And he said, what are you going to do? I'm like, I have no idea. I've got, I had a handful of affiliates / friends and other businesses in the area offering me shop space and, things to allow me to try to make a little bit of money and get back on my feet. But, Chris gave me the opportunity to move up to New York and work out of there. And after weighing everything out, that, seemed like the no-brainer to me. And, in the time frame that the shop got flooded and looted and weeks of cleanup, the only thing that I was able to actually get out of there was wiring supplies. And at the time, I was not making, looms like I'm making now by any means. But as, the shop was closed off and this, that, the other, the only thing that I could do really to keep myself sane and not want to, run into oncoming traffic was wire. And I had a couple little projects here and there. I was kind of doing it like out of the trunk of my car. I said, well, I think I'm going to try to focus on this a little bit. Chris is obviously an extremely established business in this industry, as well as a tuner, and is truly a great friend. I got up here, his affiliation with EFI University, and, just his normal day-to-day business in the shop, on the dyno, etc., really opened up a lot of opportunities for me as well. So after a little bit of time of, wrenching on cars and fixing flood cars and repairing them, I started trying to focus a little bit more of my time and energy into actually wiring. And that kind of snowballed. And, looking back on it, I would have handled a lot of it differently. I was in touch with these owners of 11 some odd cars that were in the shop and, explaining what was going to happen and what I was doing. And you'd believe that only one of them actually came and got their car, and picked it up. The rest of them, not that it would have been an easy task, but we could have, things could have been prevented had I handled it differently. But hindsight's 20/20, I guess. Right. Right. So, go ahead.
No, you go for it.
So I was just going to say, I feel like that's something that a lot of people would have just been like, I'm over it. I'm going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go work for UPS again or whatever. But you really took it as an opportunity, like a catalyst moment to, I don't know, make some changes, refine your craft, and you just kept kind of going kind of in the same direction that you were before in the sense that you were just doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And it's pretty inspiring, to be honest, that you're going from that situation to where you are now and the respect that you have in the motorsports community in such a short period of time. Mm. So why do you think you've been successful when, you know, a lot of people have tried to be in your shoes? What do you have that other people don't? And I have to say, I think it's, you know, focus and the ability to refine your craft. What do you think? I mean, you're good at what you do. You're more than good. You're, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, like I said, you have to have confidence for sure. In all honesty, I think that there's two really important things that have helped me to get to where I currently am, and you know, I'm still on my path. I'm not done by any means. The first thing is, so like you said, my attorney, Nikki, my parents, you know, they said, you got to do what feels best for you. Close down. You know, my attorney said, you can close down, open up another business, you'll be fine, you know, blah, 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 blah. I chose to make good on all of these cars and all of the damages and stolen stuff by the looting with each and every one of my clients that I was dealing with at the time, some of which are actually still clients of mine today that I've done harnesses for and this, that, the other. But when I was at that fork in the road and really not knowing what way to go, the only thing I could think of is, you know, you got to treat people how you want to be treated, and that's in life, but also in business. If I was a customer, you know, I would not have allowed any of that to happen to my own belongings. Oddly enough, a handful of them did not have insurance, and I'm still dealing with, you know, one or two right now that I'm, you know, trying to get sorted out. But the reason that I did it is because I wanted to be able to look back years from then, which, you know, is now, and say I did the right thing, and I can go to the track and bump into a past customer whose car was in my shop, and, you know, it got damaged beyond recognition, and it was FUBAR and the whole nine, and he can look at me in the eye, and I can look at him in the eye, and I could say hello, and that I have nothing to hide or be ashamed of about it. And though it may not have been as crystal clear at the time, I think it was a big point in my character kind of continuing to be formed. And the other flip of it is I've never been good at giving up on things. You know, if I get something in my head on, you know, what I want or what I want to do, I just have to make it happen. And, you know, it's normally not a overnight process by any means. But I really feel that if you have passion about something and if you really want to do well, it will happen. You will naturally put the work in, provided that you're not, you know, lazy and would rather sit at home than being productive all day.
Joel, you're a truly stand-up guy, and that's why you're successful.
Well, I appreciate it. I'd have to say that I think karma may have had a little bit of a role to do with it. But it's been challenging, but I'm proud of what I've been able to kind of transform into from it. You know, it's something that has definitely defined a large portion of my life. It's been a really, really, really roller coaster couple of years. But, you know,
to say the least.
Yeah, but you know what it is? It's like, if it didn't happen, you know, you play the tape and the coulda, shoulda, woulda. You know, I would have never met this customer and would have never had this opportunity or have done this or have done that. And, you know, when that plays out, you kind of sit there and be like, well, if I didn't do that, then where would I be right now?
Right.
You know?
So let's get out of this super negative or hard to, I don't know, remember and recall kind of a situation.
Sure.
And I want to just ask you something. What are you not good at? Like, And I don't mean that in the way like you're good at everything. Okay,
Sure.
I'm not trying to stroke your ego. What I'm trying to say is, there's certain areas that everybody can identify, okay, I'm not good at this. But in business, you kind of have to wear a lot of different hats.
Sure.
So you have to identify the things that you are good at and exploit those, and you have to identify the things that you're not good at and, avoid or figure out how to work around those things. So what are some things that you'd say that you're not good at, and how do you overcome those things?
I'm not good at saying no to potentially, I guess, higher need customers. Definitely not good at kind of what we brushed on before, which was sacrificing quality for time, even though if it's going to free up profitability and the rest of it, I'm not good at that. I'm not... Just to be honest,
I feel like these are good things to not be good at.
Yeah, I'm not. I will say, I'm not good at giving up. Like I mentioned on before, but a truly thing that kind of may weigh me down. I'm not good at kind of like grabbing something, sorting it, making money on it, closing it out, and moving on to the next thing. That's easy to do with material sales, but when you're dealing with a project that has so much time into it, the only way you can really do that is to rush through stuff. And sometimes, you run into deadlines that go over when they need it to be done, which is hard to balance with the needs of racing, where it's typically last-minute type stuff. But, it's something you have to be bad at things because it gives you the chance to want to improve on them.
Right.
Nobody's perfect. I'm definitely far from it.
Saying no, I think, is an important thing. Being able to say no to projects when they're knocking down your door is actually, I feel like something that's really valuable, and I've started to try to work on that myself. To say, really, the ability to say no is harder than it looks.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, and trying to sit there and practice while nobody's around, saying no in different ways. Right. You can you can kind of drag out the O a little bit, and it makes it easier. No, but it's tough. I think that a lot of people that have any type of a specialty for a living, especially in what we do, nobody got to where they are overnight. And, I'm sure everybody had times when rent was not going to get paid and you had to take work in. And I don't know if it's attributed to that and not being able to say no so quickly to things. But like you said, I'm getting better at, assessing something. No, I can't do that. I'm sorry. You don't have the time for it. Maybe your schedule doesn't allow it. And in racing, you get a lot of clients sometimes that maybe have obscene budgets and they want to throw money at you to get stuff done. And that's equally difficult because you're going to make one person happy and piss off 10. Right? If you take an expedite fee and squeeze something in. Yeah.
And that's been a tactic that that's been something that you've tried to do and is justified.
Sure. Sure. If I'm not going to be home for dinner and I'm going to be working 19, 20 hours straight.
Yeah.
You gotta
you gotta get paid for that. There's nothing.
You gotta pay to play.
That's something. Don't you think that that's something that everybody struggles with? Is somehow it's shameful to make money?
Yeah.
Some people deal with that.
Yeah, I definitely would, and it's really hard to. I was listening to one of your other your intro podcast. And I was so into it and the whole concept of it. And you said something about you realizing, that you needed to charge more money for what you were doing. And how do you feel okay in doing that, right? And how do you, how can I – sometimes I think when there's big work, you can't really charge by the hour at that point when you're running into 100 hours into something.
Yep.
Because, you can, and maybe.
But you'll probably burn more of a bridge than it's worth to make the $100.
Absolutely. I agree with that fully. But I think it's really hard, too, to actually recognize what you're worth and what your time is worth, what your expertise is worth, what your knowledge is worth, what you can actually bring to the table and provide to a client or a race team. And I think that the guys that, will be successful are the ones that can do that and figure it out, do it in a way that's respectful and not, well, I'm the most expensive person you're ever going to deal with. Because you want to get repeat business from it, right? I don't want to deal with a race team once. I want to deal with them for years. So, I think another part to it too is though that your client should want to see you do well. They shouldn't want to just get handouts from you.
It should be a partnership, no doubt about it. Everyone should recognize each other's worth.
Yes. And,
if the transaction doesn't benefit both people involved, walk away.
Absolutely. 100%. Because if you've got someone standing there wanting a handout, oh, why can't you do this for this or this for free or that for free? They're not concerned with your well-being. They're concerned with their well-being. You want to deal with – I'm fortunate I deal with a handful of clients that truly it's repeat business, and I feel that it has to be due to what I am able to provide to them, whether it's support, whether it's getting stuff done for a deadline, whether it's helping them at the track, whether it's overnighting stuff out at 8 o'clock at night, and still driving to UPS and getting sensors and spare parts in a box. That has to go the distance with the right people. And I feel like it's all about, if you're good at what you do, you're going to eventually get to a point where you have a lot of business that you can do, but you have to kind of focus on what you want to be doing and not get caught up in doing everything. And that was where the say no comes in. You have to be able to, maybe this is not the best thing for me to be doing with my time this week or next week. Let me focus on something that I know is going to actually be worthwhile.
Yeah, for everybody involved, not just yourself.
Correct. Yeah. Are you going to deal with somebody that you're more than likely never going to deal with again, or you want to deal with people that you have a relationship or maybe are starting a relationship with? And it's not, I don't want it to sound like, it's like, the sportsman level guy who's out of his house, it's not about picking favorites. It's just about picking what's best for your business, which is, I think probably the most important.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the fact that you have to hesitate to say that, with confidence is kind of a interesting situation if you want to think about it, because like I said, there's no shame in making a successful business. You have to have money to build a business that matters, to have the right components in stock,
sure,
to go and educate yourself, and invest in yourself. All those things take, time and money, and your time is valuable, especially if you're going to be there 12, 14, 15, 16 hours a day. It's just it's a no-brainer. But it's difficult to execute on. I think we'd both agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with you. It's interesting that I hesitated on saying it. I normally I find myself more concerned about my clients' well-being and them out there making the race and winning the race and going rounds and succeeding than mine. And, I think that is proven when, I'm getting home at all hours of the night once race season starts. But, I'm going to definitely try to transition that a little bit.
Yeah, so moving forward, something that you're focusing on, it sounds like, is how to execute a high-level product, but at a little bit larger scale and with a little bit less 3 o'clock in the morning.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's challenging, but we'll get it done.
No doubt. I'm sure you'll make it happen. That's what you said. You said I just have to make it happen. I feel like we should all have T-shirts that just say, I got to get shit done.
Let's get it done.
Let's get it done.
Let's get them done. I'll be on it tomorrow morning.
So this has been we really haven't even gotten to some of these questions. I'm going to have to skip over these quick answer questions, but this interview is going to have to just go live with this full length because there's so much stuff in here that I want to listen to again myself.
Right.
I'm going to transition to some quick answer questions. These don't need to be dialogue, but I'm going to fire these at you.
Oh.
So tell us about a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
Overall, I would probably say there's two. There's a new, well, it's not necessarily new, but it's quasi-fresh process called WIC, W-I-C. It's wiring in composites. There's a company, BF1, apparently has kind of spearheaded it and seems to be really developing it. So what they're actually doing is they're embedding conductors or wires into carbon composites for use on, like, real high-level motorsport. And also aerospace. So you're getting to the point that, maybe you don't need a sub-harness running to, this area of the car. It can actually be in the composite body of the car. I think that is crazy. Really cool, really, really cool technology for sure.
So is it like a circuit board where there's traces on it?
From what I've gathered, and there's not terribly much information out there, because it's such a mind-blowing concept, and I'm sure it's going to be huge. From what I gather is they're actually, as they're molding the carbon and putting the resin down in the sheets, that they're actually implementing conductors into that. There's another company, Tech Data, that has flat looms. It kind of looks like a ribbon cable, but they're actually intertwining wires with each other. And we're talking extremely small, 30 gauge Gore wire, 28 gauge, slant 32 or Spec 55 wire, whatever. But they're actually able to, produce a flat harness now. And
so what components could be run off of wiring that small?
I mean, when you're getting into that level of motorsport, they're doing injectors off 26 or 28 gauge wire, and there's nothing that says that the wire can't handle that. It's just the environment that it's going to be in. So, like, I would personally never use anything smaller than 22 gauge for a drag car for an injector, because typically the techs working on the car in between rounds are hooligans, and they don't take care in removing anything. When you're dealing with a Formula One team, maybe, they, everything is fully sealed and booted, and the harnesses are assembled properly, and there's spares of everything sitting in the trailer, so they can get away with it. I mean, you can't deny Ohm's law and ampacity and what circuits can actually take. It's just, in true motorsport, you got to go smaller and you got to go lighter. And if you're not, then you're not going to be at the top of the field and winning.
So that's the single best answer that I've had on that question yet. But you said there's two. So what's the second one?
The second one is more geek stuff. Deutsche Autosport has a quasi-new connector that they've released that kind of is in the same realm of this stuff. So it's called an ASX connector. It's a size 2 shell, which what that means for you is that the diameter of it is 3/8 of an inch, and it can take up to 6 conductors. So a 6-pin connector that's 3/8 of an inch in diameter. Again,
put that into perspective of what's currently available.
I mean, people see a firewall-mounted circular connector of some sort, and they think it's an Autosport connector, this, that, the other. Deutsche Autosport recently got acquired by TE, and they're a dedicated motorsport connector and interconnection company. Why I feel like that's a game changer is, again, in that level of motorsport, you're thinking what could you do with 6 26 gauge wires? I mean, those guys are running lambda sensors off of that. So think of, the ability to have such an out of the way micro connector on vital engine components and circuits. Again, it's smaller, lighter, faster. And just the technology that goes into it kind of blows my mind a bit.
You were making a point that a 3/8 diameter connector holding 6 conductors was really small. So is that what I'm gathering from that? Like, what's a standard 6 conductor connector? Is that what you were getting at with the size?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So, typically, a lot of people who maybe do wiring a little bit, they're familiar with like a Deutsch DTM connector, which are, the gray connectors that anybody who's worked on a car that has some excess parts has seen. Those connectors are, about I don't know, 3/4 of an inch wide by 1.5 to 2 inches long. They're good. They'll do the job, but those products were originally really designed for Caterpillar, John Deere, industrial type stuff. It's almost like, if you're going to get a set of pistons, are you going to get a cast set of something floating around, or are you going to get a forged, specifically designed lateral gas port coated skirt type piston from CP, say?
Got it.
Specialized product, that's all.
Sure. So what software program are you using daily? A lot of people have said Excel, but this could be SolidWorks, Google Calendar, or anything. What do you got?
Excel. Yeah. We, all my point-to-point documentation for the looms is done in Excel, and I also use Visio a lot.
What's Visio?
Visio is from Microsoft. It's kind of in like the full Office suite. It's kind of like Paint, Excel, and Word in one.
Okay.
But it allows you to do. I do my diagrams and my drawings in that. You can kind of make your own stencils. You can import, JPEGs and anything you really need. There's a whole list of electrical aspects to it. You can design circuit boards in there. You can design schematics in there. It's powerful. You can do. There's so much that I do with it that is probably not even close to what it's capable of doing. But it's fluid and it's easy to use. SolidWorks has a really cool electrical program as well, but the training required is nuts.
And the software cost.
And the software cost. And then Tyco, TE, actually has a product called Hardware, which is a Visio/CAD-based loom design program, which is typically used for mill, aerospace, loom companies that are making, products for those markets. But again, the cost, it's something like $2,000 a year for the license, and then you've got to go get trained at their head office in Menlo Park, California for 4 days for them to say, okay, yeah, you're comfortable enough to use this.
Right.
But it's pretty cool. It's powerful stuff. It's just I don't know many guys that are building looms that are actually using hardware. Visio seems to be kind of something that's a little bit more easy to grasp by the masses.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite app that you use daily? I'm a nerd, so I use Mila's Tools, a unit conversion tool. I find myself in there like every day probably. Sure. Converting units, yada, yada. What do you got?
I use Calculator. Calculator's good. And
nothing fancy.
No, nothing fancy really. I mean, I hate cell phones. I don't.
It's probably because yours is going off all day long when you're trying to do work.
Yeah, it is. So, I'm even looking at it right now. I don't really have apps. I have, my Dunkin' Donuts perks thing. that gets equal use as the calculator for sure.
Nice. So how about a favorite shop tool? This could be, fancy like a picoscope, something simple like a power probe. I'm sure you got all kinds of fancy. I already know you have a lot of fancy and useful crimpers that you're using on a daily basis. What's your favorite tool?
Sure. I would probably say I have a really slick pair of wire strippers from Ideal Industries that are actually ergonomic, and the blade set is specifically designed for the mill wire that we use in these looms. So, when you're sitting at the bench for hours and hours and hours preparing cable, it's a really nice piece to have. And then
I feel like you showed me that a couple years ago when I was over there.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the same tool that you're still stoked on 2 years later.
It very well may be. Like your dyno is probably your favorite tool, right?
Right.
So that, and then I've got this ringer. It's called, but what it is it actually is a stripper for shielded cable, which we obviously use quite a bit, and Teflon-based shielded cable has a really crazy jacket on the outside, and it is not really the best practice to just slit it with a razor blade and pull it off. So this ringer, we actually, you send in a wire sample to the manufacturer, and they sell you a blade, and the blade is, the size of an eraser on a pencil. You assemble it in the tool, and it has the proper depth to cut through the insulation for that specific type of Teflon-based shielded cable you're using, and it just really expedites the process of preparing shielded cable, which coincidentally enough are typically the more vital circuits on the loom for sure, because we use it for ref, sync, things along those lines.
Sure.
So yeah, I'd probably say those two.
So to end this conversation, man, I got to ask you just a few last questions,
Sure.
And one of them that's important here to me, and I think you already touched on it, about the future of automotive performance,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like this WIC process is pretty cool in the really high end motorsports. I'm sure it'll never trickle down into anything other than the highest end.
Yeah.
But as far as street cars and things, that's really where my question lies.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the future of automotive performance is? Is it hybrids and direct injection? And how do you see that 5-10 years from now? What do you think you're going to be doing?
I think DI is definitely going to be the direction that things continue to go in. I read an interesting article on it the other day, actually, and that the fact, it's not like DI is this huge new technology, but the OEs now are back on the bandwagon of utilizing it. They're spending more money per application, to build a car with DI. And as time goes on, once all of the new cars coming out are going to be, based off of some, maybe a handful are going to have DI, and people are going to want the performance benefits of it, then the aftermarket will latch on to that, and, injectors and the rest of the supporting components that are going to be required to really modifying those engines to suit, making big power. You can tell it too. I mean, Motec just released in the past year and change, the direct injection ECUs. So you've got the M142, you've got the M182, and if a company like Motec is putting the R&D and time into it to develop a product for that, then absolutely, sure. On my end, there's really not much I can do with it, though. You know what I mean? Those new engines and those new cars, I don't really step into anything on those until people are ripping them apart and turning them into a dedicated race car, where we can delete a handful of the factory controllers on the car and build a specific custom loom, and add in and fit the other devices and controllers and logging setups that we need. But I would say DI is going to probably continue to crank for sure. It's impressive technology either which way. So,
Joel, how do we connect with you and your company?
Instagram at RaceSpec. Facebook. It's facebook.com/RaceSpecUS. Try to keep the pictures flowing and the engagement good with, the average enthusiast as well as...
So we can see what you're doing on the back end.
Yeah, you can come take a look.
Nice.
Yeah.
Man, I want to say thanks so much. This has been the single longest interview that we've done so far, but I'm gonna put the whole interview live in one session because it's just killer. So really appreciate you taking time out of your day. It's Sunday, and we're both here working. Don't get it twisted. We're definitely at work. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna probably get snowed in here, like I told you earlier. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm definitely big support of what you're doing with this. I think it's really neat.
Thanks, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app,